In this chapter, we will explore how to declare variables while writing stored procedures or anonymous block using Snowflake scripting. In our last 3 episodes, we had a detailed discussion about the importance of Snowflake SQL scripting, its history, explored common usage pattern, provided real-life examples, highlighted best practices to ensure you stay away from any anti-patterns while using Snowflake scripting for stored procedures. The last chapter talked about Snowflake scripting block structure, including the optional and necessary section, how to debug in case of issues, and changes needed for SnowSQL CLI interface. If you haven't seen chapter 3 yet, please watch it before moving on. Variables are essential in every programming language, and it's a common knowledge that they need to be declared and defined before usage. The same principle applied to Snowflake scripting. This chapter will guide you through the process of declaring variables, particularly standard SQL data types within a declare section. We will cover the case-sensitive applicability, assigning SQL data type to variables, default values using expressions, expression using built-in function, expression using SQL statement, data type inferences and implicit casting, and how the SQL statement within an anonymous block or stored procedure is registered in query activity. So, welcome back to my channel Data Engineering Simplified. I will be using the free trial enterprise edition of Snowflake on AWS for this video. You can test all the SQL script used in this tutorial in free trial edition. Refer to the description below for details or downloadable content. For optimal video clarity, ensure that you are watching this video in its highest resolution, which is 4K. If you wish, you can also speed up playback rate to 1.25x or 1.5x to learn faster. You can jump to a specific chapter. The chapter detail is available in the description below, or move your cursor to the chapter marking in the video bar. For discussing specific SQL challenges, design issues, or architectural pattern, or any other feedback or a new topic request, you can connect with me in two simple ways. Send a direct message on my Instagram or join my exclusive Facebook group. To join the Facebook group, simply scan the QR code shown on the screen. And yes, if you are a dedicated Snowflake professional looking to enhance your skill in more structured manner, explore my premium Udemy courses to conquer your fear and level up your Snowflake expertise. So let's start. Let's first explore 3 distinct methods for declaring and defining variables in Snowflake scripting before we practice them using Snowsight WebUI. Let's start with approach 1. And here, in this simple example of variable declaration inside the declare section. In this approach, we start with the name of the variable, followed by SQL data type, and then statement is terminated by a semicolon character. You can define as many variables as needed of different SQL data type as shown here. Each declare statement must be terminated by a semicolon character. In the second approach, we start with the name of the variable and skip the data type definition and then use default keyword followed by an expression. In this case, it is a fixed default text called not known and it is assigned to the variable my underscore variable. And finally, it is terminated by a semicolon character. When this is compiled, the data type is inferred dynamically or so-called implicitly for the variable. And in this case, the data type inferences will be the text for the variable my underscore variable. You can mix approach 1 with approach 2 as per your requirement, and Snowflake does not have any restriction following this mixed approach. In the third approach, we can start with the name of the variable followed by the data type, then use default keyword followed by an expression. And finally, it is terminated by a semicolon character. In approach 2, we did not have the data type, and in approach 3, we have the data type followed by default expression. When this is compiled, the data type is inferred dynamically from the expression, and if the data type declared here different from the data type inferred from the expression, then this entire line will end with an error. You can mix approach 1, approach 2 and approach 3 as per your requirement, and again Snowflake does not have any restriction following this mixed approach. When this block is executed, all the variables which are having default value will get the default value. However, if the default keyword is not associated while declaring the variable, then the variable will get a null value. In this case, my underscore date underscore variable will have a null value. As we learned in our previous chapter about anonymous blocks and stored procedure construct, the anonymous block body is just copied and pasted right after the as keyword when we define a stored procedure. And then return type from the anonymous block must match with the stored procedure specification. So if you look into this example, line number 29 to line number 32 is a stored procedure specific declaration. Then line number 33 to line number 43 is a stored procedure body using Snowflake scripting, and variable declaration is same as we have done in anonymous block. So we have covered the theory so far. Let's go to our Snowsight WebUI and see all of them in action and explore different scenarios. Here I am in my Snowsight WebUI, and this is my first worksheet called without data type. So I am following approach 1 where I am declaring a variable called text variable within the declare section. Okay, and let's say we have not specified the data type as per our approach 1. And when I try to execute this anonymous block, let's see what result does it bring. So my anonymous block compilation failed with SQL compilation error, and it says error line 2 at position 4, which is, this is my first line and this is my second line of my anonymous block, and position 4, which is nothing but this point. And it says the variable text variable must have either a type or an initializer to infer a type from. Now if I execute the same anonymous block through a stored procedure, let's see what happens. It ends with the same error. However, here it says SQL compilation error, error line 2 at position 4. So don't get confused that this is my second line. This is my stored procedure specification, and the stored procedure body start right after the keyword as. So this is my second line and this is my fourth character position. Okay, and that's the trickier part when you are debugging stored procedure, because the line number indication from the Snowflake error message is sometimes misleading. So I cannot simply declare a variable without a data type, and data type must come through an explicit way or implicit way via default followed by expression. So now I am going to add the data type called text here. I can also keep a string or a varchar. All are synonyms in Snowflake. Now my anonymous block executed successfully, and if you do not have any default value, then this text variable will get a null value, and that's what the return of this anonymous block shows through the result. Now let me execute this stored procedure. So my stored procedure created successfully. If I try to call this stored procedure, and I also got result null here. So having a data type is must. Without that, no variable can be declared in Snowflake. Next, we are trying to understand if Snowflake scripting variables are case sensitive or case insensitive. So this is my anonymous block. Here I have created my text variable of type text, and I'm trying to return, and under this begin and end section I am returning the variable called text underscore variable, and everything is in uppercase. Let's execute this anonymous block and see the result. So my anonymous block compiled and executed successfully without any issue. Now if I try to execute it through the stored procedure, let's see how does it work. So this function is created successfully, and let me call this stored procedure, and this also executed without any issue. So it means that Snowflake scripting variables are not case sensitive, and whether you write it in a lowercase or uppercase, everything gets converted into uppercase. Let's extend it further, and here in this anonymous block I have defined the same variable name in 3 different forms. The line number 41 says text variable, everything lowercase. Line number 42, text underscore variable, name is all in uppercase. And on line number 43, text underscore variable, the initial character is in uppercase. Now when I return text underscore variable. And let's try to execute this anonymous block. So this execution ended with SQL compilation error, says line number 3 at position 4, variable with name text underscore variable declared twice. What if I move this position up and down? Let me re-execute this block and try to see the error pattern. It ends with the same error, saying that line number 5 at position 4, variable name text underscore variable declared twice. And if I look into the line number 5, which is my first line, second line, third line, fourth line, and this is my fifth line. And position is 4 because it is fourth character. So all the variable which is defined in Snowflake scripting gets converted into uppercase, and then it is being used throughout the anonymous block or stored procedure block. Now let's explore how the default value works, and this is my third worksheet called default value. This is my anonymous block, and in this anonymous block, I have not defined the data type for this text variable. I have used the keyword default and given this hard-coded fixed value. Now let me execute and see how this anonymous block behaves. So it has returned this not known, and when I click on this not known text, it is primarily a text type, because when this variable is declared and defined, the data type for not known is inferred by Snowflake's SQL scripting engine, and that data type is assigned to this text variable. Now I can also follow text as a data type for this text variable and then use this default followed by expression. Let's execute it. Here also it has worked. You can also change to some different text data type. And if I click on this, here it is still text. If I go with varchar, here it is also text. So text, string, varchar, all of them belongs to the same string or a text family within Snowflake. Now if I try to execute the same on the stored procedure, let's see the behavior. So my stored procedure got created. Let's call the stored procedure. So not known is returned and the return type is a text. Here it is more easy because the return type is text here, and this return type should match with this return type, else my stored procedure will end with an error. Let's try that. So if the return type is number on line number 10, let's see what happens. Though my variable got created, now let's call this stored procedure. It says uncaught exception of type expression error on line number 4 at position 11. Numeric value not known is not recognized. So when I say line number 4, here it is 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is going to be typecasted to the number, which is not happening, and that's why it is failed. Now let me try the same thing here. So if I define a number data type for this text variable, however, this expression is not a number data type, let's see what happens. Here it ended exactly with the same error, saying uncaught exception of type expression error on line number 2 at position 33. Okay, because it says position 33, numeric value not known is not recognized. So it is line number 2, which is this, and this position is your 33. So if I make it 10 and try to re-execute, let's see what happens. So it got executed successfully. So it is very important that when you are writing a very complex and a long stored procedure, you have to make sure that you have validated how these expressions are evaluated, what is their implicit data type inference, and that data type inference should match with your declared data type, else your anonymous block or stored procedure will end with an error. The challenge with stored procedure, when you compile the stored procedure, the expression is not evaluated. Now let's try to do the same thing with the stored procedure and see what time this error is thrown. whether it is thrown during the compilation time or execution time. Let this be a number. Here, this is a number, so this line should fail. Let's recreate this stored procedure. So the stored procedure got created successfully. It means this line got compiled without any problem, but when I was executing this line as a part of anonymous block, it got failed. Now let me call this stored procedure. So now it ended on line number 2, which is again this particular line because my body of the stored procedure start from here. So this is the challenge you will see when you are debugging a stored procedure specifically for data type inferences. This is my fourth worksheet called default with expression, and here we will explore if a function can be associated as a default expression. And just to make sure that we are able to track these SQL via our query activity, and I'm trying to alter the session and setting the query tag as a single function as expression. So this is my anonymous block, and I have two variables. First is ts underscore variable and second is dt underscore variable. I am following approach 3 where data type is defined, and then I have this default keyword, and here I am using context function. The first context function is current timestamp and second context function is current date. Now here when I am returning, I am concatenating these two variables using a plus operator, and let's see whether it is possible or not. So it ended with an SQL exception saying that uncaught exception of type expression error on line number 5 position 11, SQL compilation error on error line 1 at position 32. And if you read this message, it says invalid argument type for function plus and timestamp and date. So let's check what is the line number 5. So this is my first, second, third, fourth, fifth. This is my fifth line, and the plus operator is not a valid operator. So we know that if we have to concatenate two values or two fields in SQL, we have to use the double pipe. So this should be my operator. Now let's run this anonymous block. Now I finally got the result, and my current timestamp and current date, which is built-in function and that is also called context function, is working. So if you have a requirement where your variable should get a default value from a built-in function in Snowflake, you can really follow this approach. Now, if I have to really try it within the stored procedure, so let me run the same set of code using the stored procedure, and line number 19 to line number 25 is exactly copy paste of what we have seen in anonymous block. Let me create this stored procedure. It is created successfully, and what I would like to see, this context function does not need any virtual warehouse. When I'm calling this stored procedure, I would like to go back to the query activity and try to check it. How do they look like? So I got the result, and this result is type text. Okay. So let's quickly check the query profile. This is my query profile where this is my value clause and this is my variable sp. If I go back to the query activity screen and I'm copying this query tag, and let me apply a filter using query tag. Here I can see call my variable sp is executed, and that has used compute warehouse. However, I do not have any select statement which calls those context function. Okay, and we will see in the later part of this video how the query activity captures the individual query which is part of your stored procedure within the declare block. If you want to assign the output of a scalar function or user-defined function, which is a built-in function in the Snowflake, you can always use in a default expression, and that result will be automatically assigned to this variable. Now let's simulate another scenario where my expression is not just a single function, but I am using a multiple function using a concatenate character. So before that, I am just altering the session. And this is my another worksheet. And if you look into this anonymous block, here I have a text variable, and instead of using one single UDF or a context function, I have used three different functions. They have concatenated using this pipe sign. It means that the result will be a single value. Now let's execute this. It got executed successfully. And if you look into the result, it says system admin R&D SP, right? So if I try to execute it through the stored procedure, let's see what happens. Let me call the stored procedure. So it got executed. Let me copy this query tag and go back to query activity. So this is my last statement, and there is no additional statement executed with this query tag as select statement. Good. So there is a possibility that you have to combine the output of multiple built-in function as a single value, and then that value you want to assign it to a variable. So you can follow this approach to assign the value to the variable. Now let's say if you have a requirement where you have to assign a value to a variable based on the select statement. And this is my new worksheet called expression with select. And before I really go ahead and run this anonymous block, let me set the used cache result false. So it should not use any data set available in the warehouse cache or result cache. Now I also set the query tag as select as expression. Let's say I have a requirement where the outcome of this select statement, which is nothing but total number of rows in this table, should be assigned to the table count variable. So first of all, is this possible or not? Let's check that. So when I execute it, it ends with a syntax error saying that unexpected select on line number 5. And here it is difficult to say why it says line number 5, because in earlier we have seen that this is a line number 2. So here Snowflake behavior is slightly unexpected or little confusing. So to fix the problem, let's say if I encapsulate this entire select statement within this bracket, what happens? And let's rerun it and see how does it behave. This time I managed to get the result, which is 150K as outcome of this anonymous block execution. And same thing, I'm trying to do it here within the stored procedure to see how the behavior is. And if I execute this, it also ends with an error saying that line number 18. However, this entire stored procedure is pretty small. So when you see the line number 18, you do not know which line it is representing. And that's what you have to practice by trying different scenarios in Snowflake, specifically when writing Snowflake script. Now let me encapsulate this and let me re-execute. So this got created successfully. Now here I am doing select as expression with SP. I'm just changing this query tag just to make sure that I track this stored procedure execution separately. Now it got executed, and let me rerun this. And since my caching is false, this should not come from the caching. Generally, any select count comes from the cloud layer and it does not need a virtual warehouse, but still I'm following this cache equals to false as a parameter. So my stored procedure also brought the same result. Now I have selected this query tag, and let me go back to the query history. Now if you look into the query history, specifically when I call this my variable SP, the select statement is visible in my query history. And if you look into the query execution time, it says 479 millisecond, and this query execution took 238 millisecond. Now it is not very clear from any documentation whether this 479 includes this 238 or not. But since this query is part of this stored procedure, I can safely assume that this 238 is a part of that 479 millisecond. I do not have any virtual warehouse, so I can assume that this query has not used the compute to fetch the result. And we will see how this behavior looks when I go for slightly more complex queries, which is part of my declare statement. And if I filter my result with this query tag, let's see how does it look like. This is my anonymous block execution, which also took the compute warehouse. And right after the anonymous block execution, I can see I have a select statement which says select cast within the bracket select count star from Snowflake sample data and customer. So this clearly says that I can use a select statement, and this select statement has to be encapsulated within this bracket sign, otherwise this statement will fail. However, Snowflake documentation does not say very clearly whether it is possible or not, and this query will be recorded separately in your query activity. However, by looking at the query, it is not very clear whether this query was part of the stored procedure or not. So when you are running a very complex ETL or ELT workload where a lot of stored procedures are running side by side, so if you can use a query tag to ensure that these queries are part of a stored procedure, which is good. Otherwise, it will be little hard to validate from the query activity screen whether this query was executed as a part of stored procedure or not. If you look into the query ID, both the query IDs are different and there is no linking provided, at least in this screen. And if you have an answer that how I can correlate these two queries, feel free to drop a comment in the comment box. Now let's see another scenario where I would like to assign a variable to another variable. Let me quickly disable the cache and also assign a query tag to this worksheet. Now this is my first anonymous block where I am defining my first variable called first underscore variable with the default value 10, and I have a second variable which is again a type number, and the default expression for the second variable is a first variable, and then I am returning the second variable. Now let's see if it works or not. So yes, it works. So if you have a requirement, second variable gets the value from the first variable, then this is how you can write. Now, what if I have to use a plus operator because these are the number data type? If I'm going to use this entire calculation as an expression, does it work or not? Let's see that scenario also. So this also works. Now my third scenario is that if I have to use a function and that function uses the first variable from my declare section. So this also works. It means that if you have a requirement where you want to reuse a variable to define the second variable, then you can really have that flexibility here. So only thing to remember that as long as this return a single value, this can be assigned to the variable through this default expression. Let me quickly try this within the stored procedure to see if the same anonymous block body also works like the way it works for anonymous block. So this is, I am recreating my variable sp here. So stored procedure got created. Now I'm just changing my query tag and I'm going to call this my variable underscore sp. So this got executed. And since I do not have any select statement and these expressions are pretty straightforward, let's see how the query activity looks like. So I just have one single statement. If I go inside this, my query profile is very similar and there is no specific change compared to the previous query profiles. Now let's quickly simulate how the data type mismatch exception appears. This is my another worksheet called data type mismatch. Let me set the query tag. Now this is my anonymous block where I am defining a decimal variable of type number 5 by 2 and default expression is taking text character, and obviously this should not work, but let's see what kind of exception is thrown when I try to execute this. So it is uncaught exception of type expression error on line 2, which is this line, looks good, and numeric value hello world is not recognized. So this is not a numeric value, and that's why the data type inferences from this statement is a string or a text. However, this variable is defined of number type, and that's why this exception has come. What if I have a text data type but the default infer 5.3 as a decimal? Does it try to cast to the text and assign to this variable? Let's try to play with it. So this has worked, and when I click on this particular value, it says this is a text. So Snowflake is intelligent enough. First, it will try to infer the data type, and after inferences of the data type, it will try to match it. If it cannot be matched, then it will do a casting. If the casting also fails, then it will throw an error. Now let's see if integer type but default expression is inferring the float type, and let's see how does it behave. So it has truncated a value, and finally this is coming as a fixed. Now you may have a situation that this fixed value is nothing but an dynamic expression from your select statement, and that statement during the runtime execution will not be able to cast it to this definition, and your stored procedure execution may fail. Now let me try the same block in my stored procedure. So here the definition is number, but this default expression is returning a float. And let's see how does it work, because the return type is here number and this is a number variable. Now let me execute this stored procedure. So this has been executed. So execution is successful. Before I call this stored procedure, let me set the query tag. So I got the same result. Not sure why it is appearing twice. Result is 5, so it is the same execution. And this is how my query profile looks like. Nothing new here, it's all same. So this is the behavior you have to be aware of. If your default expression is coming from a select statement using a query, then there is a good chance that your stored procedure may fail during the execution. So we have seen all the basic scenarios. Now we'll try to define different kind of a data type and see how does it work. So this is my new worksheet called different data type, and let me quickly set the result cache and query tag. So if you look into this highlighted area, line number 5 start with text followed by number. Then we have a decimal variable, we have a date variable, timestamp variable, boolean, variant, array, and object. And let me quickly print the boolean variable here. So let me quickly execute this. So this anonymous block is returning a boolean type, and this is how it looks like. If I quickly change to a JSON variable, here this is variant type, and if I return the array, this is my array data type. And if I try object, so this is my object data type. So these are all standard SQL data type in Snowflake, and we are going to cover cursor, exception, and result set in the future video. Now let's say that I have really copied, pasted this entire anonymous block as a body of the stored procedure, and this is returning object variable from here, and I have to make sure the return value should also be object data type. So let me create this stored procedure. It is created. Let me alter the query tag. Let's call this stored procedure. So this is executed. So this is the single entry in my variable SP, because all the context function is not registered as a select statement. And now if you look into this stored procedure where all these variables are taking value from the select statement. So if you look into the int variable, it is primarily taking the count from a customer table. This decimal variable is taking minimum actual sales value from my supplier table, and the date is coming from the order table, where a function is applied as a part of select statement. These two variables are taking current time and current timestamp as a default expression. The boolean is coming from this case statement within this select SQL from the supplier table. Now if this is my requirement where a lot of variable data set is having a default expression, and the default expression is coming from a different query, so my result set cache is false. And first I'm going to create this stored procedure. So my stored procedure is created successfully, and before I call the stored procedures, let me run this alter statement. And now I am calling my procedure. It got executed, and let me take this tag. So this is my stored procedure call, and all the select statement are registered as a separate SQL statement. Each of them are having their own query ID, and this particular select statement has used compute warehouse. And if you look into the total time taken by the stored procedure is a 421 millisecond, and these are the individual SQL statement execution time. Now if I open this query profile, it says value clause followed by my SP execution. If I go back to this select statement, my query profile is metadata based because we know that the count is a metadata based stuff. Now let's talk about this minimum value which has used a compute warehouse, and here it has used a generator followed by result. So this result is coming from your database. So if you have a lot of select statement as a part of your declared block, this is how it would be registered in your Snowflake query activity. So as per your functional requirement for your stored procedures, you can really use a complex select statement. However, you have to make sure that your select statement only generate one single value which can be assigned to this variable. Now let's discuss another specific scenario pertaining to select statement as an expression and infer behavior. So this is my another worksheet, and let me quickly run them. So if you look into this anonymous block, here it is variable name is account balance and the data type is declared as a number 12 by 2. This is my default keyword and this is my select statement. If I run this select statement, it produces a result 999.99, and if I hover it, this is a fixed value. Looks good. Now if I try to run this entire anonymous block, this looks good and I managed to get the result. But what we have learned that if I remove this data type, Snowflake will automatically infer the data type from this expression and try to assign the data type to this variable. So if you see this highlighted section, my number data type is removed and my expectation from this anonymous block is to assign a data type to this account balance variable automatically. But let's see if it happens or not. So it says SQL compilation error, error line 2 at position 4, variable account balance cannot have its type inferred from initializer. Which seems to be little odd, I do not know. Snowflake documentation does not throw any light on this. Maybe in future version of Snowflake, this can be fixed. So let's check what version I am using. So I am using version 7.42.2. Maybe in future, if this statement really works, which I feel it should, you can drop a note in the comment section. Now you may say that this might be an issue with a decimal value. It should not be an issue with a text value. And for that, I have another block here, which is returning a name from this customer table with having a limit clause. Now, this is also an interesting thing that you can also use limit clause to take only one value from your select statement. This also says, so variable name cannot have its type inferred from initializer. Now, if I define text here, let's see whether it works or not. So this worked. So this indicates that if you have a select statement and that select statement is a part of initializer through the default value, the data type assignment doesn't work. This is my another worksheet where I'm trying to simulate, can I assign multiple variable at one go? So let me quickly run them. So if I look into this anonymous block, I have only one variable defined here called account balance, and the result and the value for this account balance is coming from my select statement. And we have seen that this works well. So I got the result, and in many programming languages, you can define multiple variable in a one single line, and that's what I'm trying to do. If I have minimum account balance and maximum account balance, and this is my select statement, which fetches minimum and maximum account balance, and I would like to assign the respective positional outcome from this select statement to this variable. So before that, let me run this select statement to see if it brings result or not. Yes, I got the value. Now I am going to run this entire anonymous block, and it says syntax error number line 14. So obviously this is not line 14, but this is actually this line 14 it is talking about, and this is not a valid syntax with respect to Snowflake scripting. It means that I have to break this line into two different lines when I am declaring the variable. Now I have made the changes, one is min, one is max, and let's execute it. So this got executed. So this particular statement is not a valid Snowflake scripting syntax and you should avoid it. Maybe in future Snowflake may support this style. We have understood three different approaches to declare variables inside the declare section. The default values with simple to complex expression including select statement, multiple scenarios and data type inferences, and how all these are registered in your query activity screen. In the next chapter, we will discuss about how to declare variables inside the begin and end section. Be sure not to miss the upcoming chapter, which features a hands-on tutorial that is crucial for understanding how to write Snowflake scripting using variables for your anonymous block as well as for your stored procedures. I hope you got something valuable from this video. If you did, please hit the like button. Your support not only recognizes the work behind this free content, but also helps others to discover this playlist. And if you think it can help someone else in your team, feel free to share. Thanks for watching and let's spread the knowledge and growth together.